As the enormous alien ships descended, the sky grew darker, creating shadows over the cities underneath the invaders. Standing tall and wearing sleek armor, they exuded superiority, and their technology appeared to, as they landed, decades ahead. They shone with weird lights and made noises that were incomprehensible to humans. The humanities clustered about the cities in the recognition, and the warlords in capital after capital. Each one came out more menacing than the previous, their assurance undeniable. Instead of attacking right away, they watched as though judging the value of their opponent's contempt for humanity became apparent as they expounded on their goals through translated transmissions in which they derided the weapons they referred to as prehistoric relics and ridiculed Earth's antiquated defense strategies, declared that Earth will undoubtedly fail, and issued a warning to either surrender or perish. Human authorities hurried to reply and diplomatic attempts were made, but the aliens dismissed them as weak. Efforts to activate Earth's military forces by deploying missile systems, jet tanks, and as a result, devastating missiles detonated innocuously in response to extraterrestrial shielding bullets. Without causing any harm to any aliens, the world's collective ricocheted off their armor, and fighter jets plummeted from the skies. The invasion by ERS made Arsenal, a source of pride for decades, helpless, taking immense pride in their authority and frequently putting on public demonstrations of it. They could easily deactivate city-wide power grids, destroy tanks with a simple sweep of their hands, and hover, people cowered in fear as dark clouds loomed over inhabited regions, daring anybody to retaliate. Fear as they watched helplessly in the midst of this pandemonium as their defenders failed them. As their haughtiness increased, the invaders started to undervalue humanity. Their technology had made Earth's defenses useless, but this arrogance wasn't shared by everyone. While the extraterrestrial warlords celebrated their triumphs, there were some humans expressed their indignation by refusing to accept the story of certain defeat. Perceived the invaders' haughtiness as a possible vulnerability in the midst of this global catastrophe. He was a lone figure, not a leader of armies or a soldier in the traditional sense. He was a man with years of experience honing his expertise in the seemingly irrelevant art of precision. His knowledge may be the most valuable in this time of despair, when high-tech warfare is the norm. He had been a rifleman for years and was someone who understood what humanity needed. His preferred weapon, which seemed to be an antique bolt-action rifle, was patience, precision, and tenacity. Minor in comparison to the invader advanced machinery, but he recognized opportunities where he observed the warlords intently, analyzing their motions, while others saw just futility, actions in contrast to those of the rest of the world. And he wasn't impressed by their technological advancements. Instead, he highlighted their weaknesses, tiny fissures in their armor that seemed impregnable. While others retreated, he got ready, and he realized that the aliens were making fun of Earth's. Their vulnerability was weapons. They were overconfident and thought they were untouchable, thus they ignored the notions of violence. For him, the possibility of something as antiquated as a gun was an opportunity. The riflemen started making plans for retaliation rather than survival all throughout the world. Lost hope, governments were broken, towns were deserted, and humanity appeared to be collapsing beneath the weight of the riflemen. However, saw no other choice and were not motivated by glory despite their own terror or understanding. He was motivated by a deep-seated resolve to demonstrate to the warlords that Earth was not as defenseless as they thought. Since they thought he was aware of the stakes, it wasn't only about demonstrating ability to keep up with the rebellion. It was about demonstrating how much humanity had to restrain, while something that stripped the system of all external resources. Although the rifleman did not anticipate changing the course of the invasion on his own, he did believe in the ability of a well-staged strike. He understood that even the slightest disturbance may motivate others to stand up, and the geological possibilities of a new night storm had becoming more and more likely. Where technology could succeed where brute force failed, desperation drives ingenuity. Persistence could triumph. The rifleman personified these ideas in a remnant of a previous period who was forced to battle and adapt as the aliens carried out their campaign of intimidation. The rifleman started gathering the necessary equipment and cleaning his basic yet dependable gun. And prepared ammunition was selected with care, with every bullet serving as an opportunity to disprove the aliens. He went over what he had seen on their movements. Pinpointing patterns and possible vulnerabilities, his intellect was keen and his determination unwavering. Humanity observed as the warlords became increasingly blatant in their contempt. Since Earth's defenses grew stronger over time and they paraded around destroyed cities with the assurance that no one could challenge them, they assumed that Earth's primitive armaments made resistance futile and undervalued humanity. The world might have perceived the presumption that the riflemen foresaw would be their downfall, as the riflemen perceived aliens as formidable, but they also thought they were unstoppable. Yes, but their conceit prevented them from seeing that they were not invincible. Resistance, and the rifleman thought that blindness was the gap he needed. The rifleman readied himself for a confrontation that no one else thought was feasible while the world lamented its losses. Was not naive, he was aware of the dangers and the probable consequences of his actions, but he also recognized something else. The strength of a single person with expertise and purpose, as well as the capacity of determination, were not possessed by the aliens. Throughout history, tales of tenacity have been the foundation of humanity's success. The least likely heroes have frequently overcome the biggest obstacles. The rifleman didn't think of himself as a hero, but he was prepared to stand where others had fallen, for him, because the battle was intimate. For the conviction that Earth was worth protecting, not for fame or honor. The invaders had made a crucial mistake by underestimating humanity. The rifleman was prepared to demonstrate to them that even the most sophisticated technology could be subdued. A resolute person's steady hand as the extraterrestrial warlord scoffed at Earth's seeming ineptitude, not knowing that one man, equipped only with a rifle and determination, was getting ready to confront their dominance. Long before the alien invasion, the rifleman tale was shaped by encounters that shaped him into a resilient and accurate person. He had led a life centered on qualities of discipline and purpose that were developed over years of practice and instruction. He demonstrated an unusual ability to capture the attention of shark fans around the world and was adept at turning public opinion against the shark. Influencing a talent where accuracy was crucial was about knowing the components, calculating distances, and behaving calmly. It wasn't just about hitting a target. This ability has been a quest of personal growth for a large portion of his life while he was under strain. Despite his brief military service and participation in shooting competitions, his ability was rarely tested in circumstances where the stakes were really high. The invasion altered that. The vulnerability of humanity's advanced technologies was shown by the breakdown of Earth's defenses, but the rifleman understood something more profound. Perhaps the only way to defeat an adversary who is blinded by their own supremacy, the rifleman resorted to something old while the rest of the world frantically tried to save what was left of its technology. The preferred weapon was an antiquated bolt action rather than a cutting-edge firearm, or the result of contemporary innovation. Rifle was an antiquated weapon that lacked the quick fire of contemporary firearms, but he had entire faith in them because he was aware of every detail. He had altered every aspect of its behavior over the years to fit his requirements, enhancing its precision without changing its simplicity, which some perceived as archaic. He viewed the rifle as perfection, an instrument refined over innumerable hours that was more than just a weapon. The rifleman thought that after hours of practice, its weight felt comfortable in his hands and its operation was instinctive. In his weapon, since he was confident in his ability to handle it precisely and was aware of both its strengths against a rival that undervalued the fundamentals, those strengths may turn into insatiation. He grew obsessed with planning, since he realized that dealing with an opposition with greater troops and technology would need more than just his necessary competence. A strategy-based plan that was executed with accuracy. His method was he carefully examined every facet of the aliens, noting their behaviors and reactions to humans, attacks, their dependence on technology, the predictability of their patterns, and their obvious overconfidence. He carefully collected resources, made munitions a priority, and disregarded Earth's opposition. Chosen it with the same kind of care that a chef might use when selecting ingredients for a beautiful meal. The bullet's weight and quality were as anticipated, guaranteeing that it would fly true when the time came. He knew there would be discomfort. The rifleman had no intention of overpowering the aliens with every shot of his ammunition. Instead of using firepower, he tried to make every shot matter. His planning was unrestricted. He connected his surroundings to the workings of his weapon, comprehending how the landscape could offer cover, and, nevertheless, he found vantage spots that provided a direct view of what were probably alien routes. He prepared for potential factors that might come up during an encounter by calculating distances and accounting for wind conditions. He gave careful thought to every detail because he understood that preparation could make all the difference, not because he saw perfection. The rifleman psychologically prepared for what seemed to be an insurmountable battle, yet this was not a battle to be defeated. But for someone who questioned their purpose, he stole himself, because he recognized the realities of what was ahead. Knew his actions might not alter the invasion's trajectory, but he was adamant about having an impact, and the prospect of failure did not discourage him. The duel between him and the rifleman was intended to demonstrate that humanity was not as helpless. Since the aliens thought he had prepared by programming his body, he kept his fitness, realized that strength and stamina can be just as crucial as marksmanship. Thus, his workouts became sustainable. Knowing that every advantage he could generate could save his life, the weapon was relentless in its pursuit of it. Chance his resolve turned into a silent rebellion against the world's dejection. As he honed his strategy, he found himself considering the characteristics of his enemies. The extraterrestrial warlords, with all their cutting-edge technology, had misjudged humanity's ability to adapt, and using their ingenuity, they assumed that no one would dare to oppose them and relied on overwhelming power. Riflemen recognized a weakness in their haughtiness, that someone who was prepared to take advantage of the risk, he kept his plans to himself, and the world fell silent. The rifleman saw that its members were dispersed and broken, and that he operated alone, motivated by an inner resolve, knew his acts and efforts might go unappreciated, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the conviction that any kind of resistance, no matter how minor, had significance. As the day of conversations can now finally close, after this conversation has gone on for a long time, the Constitution drew near. He made one last check of his rifle to make sure every part was in working order. Was in excellent shape. His ammunition was prepared. His strategy was complete, and he had no misconceptions regarding the obstacles he would encounter. But he was also certain of his mission. The rifleman stood as evidence of the notion that one person might have an impact against overwhelming odds. He got closer to the time when his preparation, talents, and resolve would be tested with each step. Final test, the initial interaction was a skill preparation and calculation test. Determination, the rifleman used all of his knowledge to carry out his plan with the accuracy of a craftsman, having refined over time what the extraterrestrials regarded as their strongest attributes. Additionally, technology made their movements and patterns predictable, and they saw that their dependence and predictable device dependence produced a structure that could be researched, comprehended, and used. The rifleman was fully aware of this, and his first goal was straightforward but audacious. Upset their self-confidence, the aliens, who were so sure of their superiority, did nothing to prevent their actual movement, their breathing, their skin color. They followed rituals to hide their presence as they moved through inhabited areas. When they considered resistance to be futile, they lowered their shields. The rifleman used this haughtiness to his advantage. His planning paid off as he placed himself in a position that provided cover, this skill, and an unobstructed shot at his target. Every component of his strategy was deliberate, and he took into account the surroundings with modified for distance. And he used his knowledge of ballistics to make sure success because he was accurate in his computations and understood the bullet's trajectory. When he fired the trigger, it wasn't merely an act of defiance, it was a determination of what force was required and where it would strike. Example of the effectiveness of simplicity with instantaneous results. The rifleman's precisely placed shot caused one of the alien warlords to fall, piercing its armor. The impact wasn't simply physically and mentally. The other aliens, used to being invulnerable, were abruptly aware of their vulnerability as a result of the rifleman's conduct brought ambiguity into their ranks, and for the first time, they had to acknowledge that their technology might not have been as reliable as they thought it was, and that their reaction was quick. Drones scanned the surroundings and the warlords themselves, and sophisticated sensors were used to identify the attack's origin. Despite their efforts, the rifleman continued to move with an unusual amount of urgency. He was able to avoid their detection by using his understanding of camouflage movement and the environment. He carefully moved during the searches to make sure that no evidence of his existence could be discovered, that the aliens took advantage of this unpredictability. In spite of their predictability, in spite of their reliance on patterns, superior technology found it difficult to adjust to a type of resistance they had not expected. And predictability became a vulnerability. The rifleman took advantage of this by selecting his next target with the same degree of accuracy and preparation. His second punch was equally as powerful as the first, dealing another blow to the warlords and further eroded their trust. The rifleman's actions were not motivated by a desire for fame or fame. His goal was straightforward. Each successful shot helped to destabilize and disturb, causing mayhem inside the alien ranks. Their reaction grew more unpredictable as they tried to comprehend and neutralize a threat they couldn't, unable to recognize their reliance on technology as a source of strength at this time. Became a cause of annoyance, since their failure to locate the rifleman revealed due to the constraints of their two complex systems, the rifleman's accomplishments were not without difficulties. The aliens modified their strategy, using more sophisticated drones and stepping up the ferocity of their searches. The rifleman, but he kept one step ahead of them and predicted their next move. His acts were evidence that he had modified his tactics and was still taking advantage of their weaknesses. Emphasizes the importance of knowing one's adversary and the strength of flexibility. News of his activity spread, and his efforts started to have an impact outside of the League. Battlefield, spread by stories and whispers among the dispersed remains of humanity, while the rifleman kept his actions hidden, became a source of hope for others who had thought that resistance was impossible because of his seemingly inspired tiny act of defiance. People to reconsider how they handled the invasion, it became a representation of humanity's tenacity and capacity to resist, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The rifleman's focus stayed focused on the current work. Every move was planned and analyzed to optimize its effect. While reducing publicity, he recognized that his success hinged on he purposefully maneuvered his every step to avoid detection and preserve the element of surprise. As the alien warlords frantically attempted to retake power, the rifleman made a decision informed by a thorough comprehension of his mission. As he carried out his campaign, his acts caused operational disruptions that forced them to redirect resources and attention. He used precision striking to take advantage of their weaknesses away from their larger goals at the most inconvenient times. Anticipated it and withdrew before they could react, his actions caused a chain reaction that spread uncertainty and, given the insecurity of the invaders, the rifleman's campaign served as an example of the effectiveness of simplicity and expertise. His deeds questioned the presumptions of an adversary who had undervalued humanity's capacity. With each blow, he demonstrated that skill, preparation, and strategy could defeat even the most sophisticated technology. His achievement came from years of practice and perseverance rather than chance or circumstance. Steadfast dedication to his work and a thorough comprehension of his adversary the Axe had an influence that went well beyond the battlefield. They were a reminder that the rifleman's defiance became a beacon of hope that resistance was possible despite overwhelming odds. Hope for humanity is proof that even the tiniest deeds of disobedience can have a significant impact. Although he still had a long way to go, his actions had already started to tip the scales, demonstrating that no force of man alone could move the world of most at all, and no providential authority could shed one tear in this kind of action. Regardless of how sophisticated the builders were, who had been trained in the arts of security and resilience in society, I explained, was unable to defeat the warlords to confront a surprising fact. The defeat of 2 warlords showed that Earth's defenses were not as predictable as they had thought. For the first time since their arrival, the aliens caused a stir of doubt by moving without provocation. Their arrogance was restrained by an increasing awareness that they were vulnerable. They reacted quickly by installing surveillance drones, advanced tracking systems, and heavily armed patrols to identify the cause of the disturbance caused by the aliens' modifications. Additional difficulties, their technological expertise enabled them to search large regions and find minute disruptions and use precision. The rifleman, to predict human motions, realized that in order to continue his campaign, he would need to modify the strategy that had allowed him to succeed in the past. Stealth and surprise, yet every move forward came with increased hazards due to the warlord's increased alertness. He had to change his tactics because he could no longer rely just on them. Using ingenuity and resourcefulness to keep one step ahead of the adversary is one of the main components in his ability to predict the aliens' reactions allowed him to survive. The riflemen saw how they deployed their patrols and drones, observing patterns and actions that suggested their underlying reasoning, and concluded that, even though their technology was sophisticated, IT followed predictable guidelines, which enabled him to create countermeasures. He employed decoys and ambient elements of the natural terrain to deceive their sensors, producing fictitious trails and distractions that caused them to lose sight of his actual location. The rifleman's inventiveness went beyond deceit. He started building created homemade hurdles and traps with simple tools and materials he found around his environment. These straightforward yet powerful gadgets were made to impede the alien hunt, and by using them instead of finding them, he caused their tracks to desert quickly. They occasionally caused small damage to their equipment, which made their efforts to find them even more difficult. Although the warlords themselves were not directly threatened by the traps, they did serve as a warning that even simple ingenuity could contest their supremacy as the aliens stepped up their quest. The riflemen were under more and more pressure to stay out of the scene and out of the way. The size of patrols increased, along with the number of drones and the depth of the scans. He persisted, and his ability to stay hidden was evidence of his attention and discipline. He moved with confidence. The rifleman knew that his goal was to stay one step ahead of his pursuers and avoid needless risks. His ability to anticipate multiple moves ahead of the aliens was just as important to his survival as his competence. Concentrated their efforts on apprehending or killing the rifleman, whose deeds started to motivate others by spreading word of his. Through clandestine networks and dispersed human societies, disobedience grew among those who previously thought futile opposition, starting to recognize opportunities, and the rifleman's campaign served as a model for others. Demonstrating little acts of resistance started to show that even the most sophisticated adversary might be defeated with willpower and resourcefulness. To become worldwide, in certain regions, citizens employed crude instruments to thwart extraterrestrial activities motivated by the riflemen's accomplishments in Vietnam, with the ruling bloc becoming sterner and sterner. Citizens employed crude instruments to thwart extraterrestrial activities motivated by the riflemen's actions had sparked. A spark, and the aliens were starting to spread that spark but weren't. Their tactics escalated because they were readily deterred by the riflemen's persistent defiance. They used cutting-edge technology, such as customized drones made to monitor human sound and heat signatures. Frequencies, compared to what the riflemen had experienced, these robots were quicker, more nimble, and more accurate. Prior to the alien warlords starting to modify their tactics by employing decoys and their own detours to expose possible dangers to the riflemen, today, escalation was a significant turning point, and he realized that although his current strategies were working, they would not be sufficient to continue his campaign, as the extraterrestrial warlords were also learning and adjusting. Advantage. He had to push himself beyond his comfort zone and look for new methods to outsmart and outmaneuver his adversaries. This called for both mental and physical fortitude, as despite the difficulties the riflemen faced, the continual stress of being hunted took its toll. Unwavering determination, viewing every new challenge as a chance to push himself and improve his tactics, he kept researching the aliens to find any vulnerabilities, and every move he made was intentional. Every choice he made was planned to maximize the weaknesses he could exploit, its effect on the rifleman's resolve to defend himself notwithstanding. Despite tremendous odds, his efforts also became a symbol of humanity's resistance. The resources the aliens redirected to hunt him started to subtly but significantly alter the balance of power, made it more difficult for them to keep control elsewhere, and their obsession with one person revealed their excessive dependence on technology and their failure to foresee novel strategies, whereas the riflemen did not see. As a leader, he encouraged others to resist by acting in a way that forced the aliens to expand. As the extraterrestrial warlords persisted in their pursuit, the rifleman trimmed himself in anticipation of what he knew would be the consequences. His activities had interfered with their operations in the subsequent phase of the fight, but he saw that his ultimate objective was to cause long-lasting disturbance in order to weaken the aliens, not just to avoid capture. Confidence and make them reevaluate how they approach Earth. To do this, he had to exert more pressure and take more pressure up on him. By taking chances and accepting the potential for sacrifice, the rifleman's campaign was more than merely a Fortnite's test. His struggle for survival was a declaration of defiance. He stood for the might of human ingenuity and resolve, and the conviction that even the tiniest acts of defiance might have significant effects on society. While leading Inspector Garrett was offended by leaving his bike in the building, his capacity to confront an adversary who appeared unbeatable was evidenced by the tiny acts of defiance right up to the end. The level of sophistication was beyond human ingenuity and fortitude. Motivated by the belief that his actions, however positioned PR to meet any obstacles that might arise in the future, little things could have a big impact. The rifleman recognized that things were getting to a crucial point. Even though they were rattled by the upheavals he had produced, the alien warlords' technology remained superior, with a large military and seemingly limitless resources. Yet their annoyance was evidently their trust was eroded by each unsuccessful attempt to eliminate him. The rifleman was aware that he must further exert this advantage with the goal of not only tactical victories but also a decisive move that might tip the scales of the invasion. The last stage of his strategy called for a change in approach. Up to this point, he had depended on hit-and-run techniques, remaining mobile to prevent detection. But even if this strategy worked, it wasn't enough to deal him a permanent blow. He took a calculated risk by placing himself in immediate danger in order to maximize the impact. The rifleman's determination was unwavering. He was ready to operate with the same level of precision, even if he had no illusions about the result. With self-retrieval that had gotten him this far, his target wasn't only a small command unit or another extraterrestrial patrol. Set his eyes on the Warlords, the elusive core of the alien hierarchy, exhibited predictable patterns, and frequently gathered in places that were strictly guarded, making people think that these kinds of events were untouchable. The riflemen found one. It was a high-risk meeting that would provide a chance for several warlords to convene in one place. Reward scenario: a chance to attack the invasion force's central core. The riflemen researched the surrounding terrain in great detail in order to prepare for this moment, finding possible access sites, escape routes, and vantage locations in the alien stronghold. Every aspect was carefully thought out because he knew that success didn't depend on not just on his marksmanship, but also on capacity to stay hidden until the critical point at when his strategy was intended to take advantage of the aliens' ongoing reliance on technology and their little regard for human. When the moment came, the rifleman's inventiveness allowed him to carry out his plan with unflinching focus and swiftness, each step being exact and purposeful, bringing him closer to his target as he used every tool available to him to avoid notice as he got closer to the alien fortress. His comprehension of the aliens disconnected was very established, leading him to the findings of a well-designed bioterrorism. By marking the space to conceal the alien, he was able to predict their sensors and patrol patterns and identify weaknesses in their defenses. People might have forgotten that the rifleman's goal was more than just to kill the warlords. But he wanted the aliens to know that even the most evolved species could not completely dominate them. Determination and talent could overcome force, and his first stroke was as accurate as ever. The impact was immediate and severe, piercing the alien stronghold with unwavering accuracy. The aliens' quick and savage response sent their forces into confusion, rushed to keep everything under control, using all of their resources to find and destroy the riflemen, but the disorder among the alien ranks allowed him to launch another attack, so the turmoil worked in his advantage. Each shot was a deliberate attempt to target another warlord and widen the rifts in their leadership. A reminder that as the fight intensified, their technology was unable to keep them safe from a determined opponent. The aliens' retaliation was unrelenting, with their forces advancing on Rifleman as he confronted his biggest obstacle. He maintained his composure despite the overwhelming firepower at his position. He navigated the battlefield using his instincts and training, therefore his actions weren't motivated by despair. Although he was aware that his chances of survival were slim, every action he took was calculated, and his objective was never only. The rifleman's last deed was to make a statement and make an impression that would last long after he died. Stance was the result of all he had battled for, and his actions caused the command structure of the alien ruler forced them to flee and reorganize the crown. They suffered a serious psychological damage to their forces, and the knowledge that even their most resolute of soldiers had all failed to defy the nomad leaders was crushing, and he hoped he would find a way to separate the two from his defiance. Making them vulnerable, dependence on technology, and their inability to comprehend their opponent's tenacity following the conflict. The aliens shifted their attention from dominance to survival and withdrew from strategic locations, but their withdrawal was not a total capitulation, but it marked a dramatic change in the human power structure and was motivated by the value of posing. The riflemen took advantage of the chance to reorganize and fight across little acts of resistance around the world developed into concerted actions that changed the course of the invasion. The rifleman narrative became a reminder that even the tiniest actions of resistance might have a significant impact, and a symbol of hope. Ultimately, his acts showed the value of flexibility and the strength of willpower. Despite operating alone, he had challenges, yet his influence was felt by many. In addition to the lives he had saved and the triumphs he had won, the rifleman's legacy was found in the example he had established for others, that his tale was not one of supernatural power or invincibility. The tenacity, resourcefulness, and the rifleman's resolve to concede defeat demonstrated that one person could make a difference, despite insurmountable difficulties. His acts reminded humanity's capacity for adaptation, not their technological prowess or numerical superiority, was their greatest asset. Persevere and defend their beliefs. Ultimately, the rifleman's sacrifice was not in vain. The alien warlords were compelled to reevaluate yet Their self-assurance was shattered by the knowledge that Earth was not as defenseless as they had believed his legacy to be. Endured in the hearts and thoughts of people who had seen his deeds, igniting a fresh surge of opposition that would persist in opposing the invaders. The rifleman's battle might be over, but his influence would last for many generations, serving as a reminder of the resilience of human willpower.